All right, Groundhog Day. Let's try this again. Let's take a look at this. Biden standing on stage, looking like a younger man, brags about
I
this.
remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him.
Understand what this means. Joe Biden is basically a viceroy for the Ukraine. They are dependent on the U.S. at this point, fledgling country. They're in need. Joe Biden has $1 billion that they require, and he is holding it over their head to get them, basically extorting them to fire one of the prosecutors. Now, the catch with this is that Hunter Biden, his son, worked at the company Burisma that prosecutor was supposedly about to investigate and was going to investigate the board of that company. Hunter Biden, having no experience in gas or Ukraine, somehow, crackhead, ends up with a job doing that. I know crackheads who would love to get a job like that Hunter Biden fast track job, from crack to $80,000 a month. But nevertheless, whether it was 50 or 80,000, you have this situation where Joe Biden, viceroy of a country, massively corrupt country, where his son sits on the board of the company. And it seems that his job was basically influence. Joe Biden says, I never talked to my son about this. Never at all. And then you get a laptop through weird, strange means, ends up at a repair shop where on the laptop, the guy somehow gets into like the FBI or a city committee or whatever, but however he gets it, he gets a copy, make sure he gets it to like Giuliani and these guys. However they got it there, they have images. There's a 12-minute video of Hunter apparently having lewd acts and doing coke. And, of course, the emails. Hey, thank you for introducing me to your dad. And this was one of the executives, or eventually become one of the executives. And at another point, hey, we have a problem with this government that we need you some help with if you can use your influence. Meaning, not only based on these emails, if these emails are confirmed, did they meet, but influence was being asserted. He was doing, basically, I would argue, his job and trying to influence his dad to do what his dad did right here, that his dad basically bragged about. It goes further, but basically that's where that's where you end up with. Facebook and Twitter threw their bodies on this story to prevent this story from being shown. Seriously, when Twitter and Facebook, to show you what I mean by this, when you click the link to see the article, this comes up. Warning, this link may be unsafe. This link that you're trying to access has been identified by Twitter or our patrons as being potentially spammy or unsafe. In accordance with Twitter's URL policy, this link could fall into the following categories: malicious links that could steal personal information on a harmful electric device, nope. Spammy links that could mislead people or disrupt their experience, nope. Violent or misleading content that could lead to real-world harm, nope. Certain category of content, if posted directly on Twitter, are a violation of Twitter rules. There we are. Ding, ding, ding. Now, if I click this little button, it takes me there. Now, New York Post flipped out about this for obvious reasons. You're basically undercutting our reporting, and you're covering and hiding our story. a story that we find, if we're printing it, to be true, or at the very least needs to be entertained and not necessarily summarily dismissed. And they printed multiple stories explaining how the laptop was found, how they came in possession with the items, and whether you take this as entirely true or not, should they be hiding this story in the way that they're hiding it? And who's making the determination that this story should be buried, but other stories are perfectly okay? Twitter has gone so far in their policies to basically say they don't use leaked content anymore. Think about that. I mean, you're talking about WikiLeaks, you're talking about the Snowden files, you're talking about all of these items that people came up with, the stuff that was coming out with the Intercept dealing with the drone program. All of that stuff apparently is not fit for public viewing now. That's a heavy bin, or that's a heavy lift, or that's a heavy cross to bear in order to protect Joe Biden in this way. You can make a case and say, oh yeah, this was our policy back in 2008. But I don't think anybody cared about that policy when Trump's tax returns came out. And Trump is like, yeah, that's not my tax returns. They had no issue with continuing with publishing the information that came up from it. The information coming out from the New York Times or Washington Post when it gets, I mean, come on. How far do you have to bend back in order to make this work, to protect him from the story? No, this is literal censorship. If you want to deal with the story, you can try to take the planks out of the story like anybody else can take the plank out of any other story by basically writing a counter story to say the story is wrong. Washington Post is basically arguing that what Joe Biden said right there, despite what Joe Biden said, he really didn't have any influence in this. So which is it? Is he a liar or is he a corrupt liar? Which one? You choose. I'm making the point, though, that you at the very least can make your argument and make your statement. Anything that people say against Trump is accepted. Any investigation that is leveled against Trump is accepted. And if you want to look back at the Steele dossier and all of those dodgy the attacks on Trump from that, well, all of that was accepted. Nobody had any issue with putting those things out. I mean, think about the Mueller investigation. Think about the things that they got wrong, one story after the next, that they pushed. Mainstream media. And yeah, of course, Twitter, no issue carrying it at all. Whether it was Trump and Russia, which one plank after the next ended up falling out of that, which Twitter had no issue with carrying. And honestly, the leaks from Afghanistan, where you had the situation of them saying that the Russians were paying Afghanis in order to kill Americans. Those things were leaks. All of those things were leaks. So which is it? Why do you accept some dodgy leaks from anonymous sources, but not others? How bizarre that is. And it seems to be a choice. And therein lies the problem. This is going to have consequences, or this is having consequences. They've given the Republicans basically this platform to continuously say they are shutting us down. And on this very specific issue, they are. Even from the standpoint of the debates. Okay, Trump got COVID. So what? So what? Is it he's infectious forever now that he has COVID? Joe Biden doesn't want to have the debate. That's the first point. And on top of Joe Biden not wanting to have the debate, this is a convenient excuse for not having the debate. Trump is right to say, I don't want to have a virtual debate with you. I want to be on stage. And honestly, if it's a situation of we need to validate that he's not infectious, if Joe Biden needs to get an independent doctor from somewhere, do it. If he needs to get 3 independent doctors from different parts of the country so they can come together and do the COVID tests and each can come up with their test results, like you're on an island or something on one of the reality TV shows, do it. I'm just making the point that he's not infectious forever. And just because he was infectious then doesn't necessarily mean he's infectious now, which means that you should be having a debate. That's all I'm saying. The town hall thing. I mean, yes, you can have a town hall. And now they're even bitching and complaining about that because they're saying that they don't want the two to be on at the same time. Trump is going to be on NBC. Biden is going to be on ABC. And they're complaining. Now, I suspect that part of the complaining comes from this knowledge that Trump is probably going to get higher views. Some people maybe hate watching, but I suspect he's going to get higher views. And the Democratic Party knows it. Because the fact of the matter is, if you are voting for somebody, not because you are doing it for aspirational reasons, like, yes, this person is going to do X or this person is going to do Y, when you're voting for them entirely, basically, for this notion of who they are not, then do you really need to hear them? Do you really need to put up a line sign? Do you really need to go out and push for the guy? If you end up in a conversation, you may say some kind words, but all things being equal, it's a civic duty. It's a job at that point. You're going to go, you're going to stand in the line for 5 hours, deadened by your system and your society, with not even a concept of aspirational politics in regards to what you could accomplish as a country, especially in the context of the time that we're in. Yeah. You've given Republicans everything they've ever wanted to now basically now point out and make this pitch that they're being persecuted. They're being shut down. Social media is attacking them. Social media is not attacking them any more than it's attacking the other voices. If anything, it's attacking a large swath of opinion that doesn't necessarily float within, let's say, the realm of thought that they want. And by the way, this was always the issue that people like me brought up. Who decides what's legit? Meaning, what person, what dividing rod stands there and looks down and says, this is legit and that shit's not? And is it a person in their flip-flops, chewing on a bag of Twizzlers or something while they do it? Yeah, I don't like this story. Bling! What's your standard? And I want you to hear something else. Because Donald Trump, when he yelled out, 230, listen to what Ted Cruz is saying here. Because he is making a similar point. He's doing it in coded language, but listen to the language. It's important. He's a lawyer.
In the last 2 days, we've seen a remarkable development. We have seen big tech. We've seen Twitter and Facebook actively interfering in this election in a way that has no precedent in the history of our country. Yesterday, the New York Post broke a story alleging serious corruption of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden concerning Ukraine. The allegations in the New York Post story, if true, indicate that Vice President Biden lied when he said he had never discussed his son's business dealings. That story, once the New York Post broke it, was blocked by Twitter and Facebook. Anyone who attempted to share it was prevented from sharing it on Twitter or Facebook. The New York Post itself, when it attempted to put out its story, was blocked on Twitter and Facebook. The New York Post has the 4th largest circulation of any newspaper in this country. Never before have we seen active censorship of a major press publication with serious allegations of corruption of one of the 2 candidates for president. That was last night. This morning, the story escalated and got even worse. The New York Post broke a second story of a series of emails that indicate yet more corruption. In this instance, the Biden family receiving millions of dollars from communist China government officials. Just minutes ago, I tried to share that story on Twitter. And Twitter is actively blocking, right now, this instant, stories from the New York Post alleging corruption and the Biden family receiving millions of dollars from communist China. This is election interference, and we are 19 days out from an election. It has no precedent in the history of democracy.
Now, listen to the words. This is election interference. They're interfering in our elections. They're interfering in our elections. How? They're interfering by blocking a story on one of the candidates that they may be more preferable to. Now, the wording is important because this hits back at Article 230, meaning are these things billboards where they can't necessarily be held responsible for the things that are on them, or are they publications? where they can be. In this very specific instance, we have him basically making an argument that these guys are interfering in our elections because they are hiding, actively hiding, meaning they are actively making a choice on what to show versus what not to show. And in this specific instance, what they are not showing is basically something to the benefit of one Joe Biden. Consequences. Yeah, consequences. And now we have this weird situation where this is what they've up to. You know, the way to handle this was not to hide this, to not bury this. In fact, you made it more of a story. The fact that you didn't bury it. This story was going to be a story regardless, because the story filled in blanks that people assumed anyway. But hiding the story and burying the story is the worst aspects of this kind of new censorship culture that we have. You put out another story to deal with this. This is not a story that is inciting violence and killing and everything else. No, this is a story about political corruption that should not be summarily dismissed. And if you want to deal with it, write another story contesting the results. Pick it apart. Put the levels of truth into it, not this nonsense of censorship. And now Republicans have a perch by which to scream and bitch that they are being persecuted by social media. Thanks, Twitter and Facebook. Thanks. Like, share, subscribe.